Are you all excited to do your data analytics with Pandas? Before moving on any further, we need to get our setup right. A good setup will ensure that you have a smooth experience throughout the course. So, what we are going to do is throughout this course, we are going to have a single folder. I'm calling this Pandas course, you can call it anything you want. And the first thing we need to ensure is whether you have Python installed. And I do have Python installed. It's 2.7 and Python 3 is 3.7, and we are going to use the 3.7 version throughout. And we are not going to use the system level Python as such. What we are going to use is a virtual environment. So I want you to install virtual environment, and we are going to use the Python version 3, and we will create a virtual environment folder right here, and we'll call this pandas vn. Okay, and now that our virtual environment is getting created, once it's created, we will use Python inside that virtual environment. And so to do that, pandas source pandas environment /bin/activate. So now the pandas environment is activated. Now we have to install our first requirement, which is pandas itself, and then followed by a Jupyter notebook. So Jupyter ensures you to, it's like a code editor, but you can run code as you go along. So we need these two, which is very important. That takes about a minute or two to install. Once that's installed, we also have to set your ipykernel to the virtual environment. So ipykernel, and I am going to set it to pandas vn. Okay, now that we have our setup ready, let's spin up our Jupyter notebook. Now, to ensure that our setup is all good, I am going to create a new notebook with our pandas vn. This is the kernel that we just created. And to check everything is working fine, I am going to import pandas as pd. If this particular command works, then we have our setup ready. The next video, we'll see how to read data from different sources. Until then, stay tuned, hang on. Friends, but before we move along further, I want to take a pause and teach you three basic things that you need to know when you're using a Jupyter notebook. So to learn that, I am going to create a new notebook. First concept is a cell. So what you're seeing right here is called a cell. You can add new cells and you can remove new cells. So the things that I want to show you are, in a Jupyter notebook cell, you don't have to explicitly write print statements. For example, a simple Python command would automatically print you the output. Let's say print hello. Okay, so both of those doesn't have a lot of difference. Similarly, you can do list, dictionaries, anything of that sort, and it would automatically print it. And every cell, when you run it, it will be given a line number, and the line number gets printed for the output as well. So next keyboard shortcut that we are going to learn is to add a cell below and above the current cell. For that, you have to go into a command mode by pressing escape. You can see my key bindings here. After pressing escape, you can press B for below and A for above. If you want to delete a particular cell, go to the command mode, escape again, and press D twice. For you to get a hang of the keyboard shortcuts, I would suggest you to play around with keyboard shortcuts here. You can also change it, and all these keyboard shortcuts work only under command mode, and that is escape. Those are the few things that you need to remember: how to add a new cell below and above, how to delete a cell, how to run a cell. That is enough for this course, and you can learn a lot more as you go along. So until then, keep learning, keep enjoying. Hello all, welcome back to the course on data analytics using Pandas. In the previous video, we have gone through the steps on how to install Pandas and how to run it on a Jupyter notebook. In this section, we are going to do quite a lot of things. So let's get started. First, we need a CSV file to read from. So I've already created that and it's right here. So let's just look at our Pandas course folder. And inside that, I have a folder called data. And inside that, I have sales information.csv. On looking at sales information of .csv, it looks something like this. It's comma separated values. To get a better look, I have opened this file in a CSV reader. So CSV is nothing but a table structure of data written using comma separated values. So when you look at it as a text file, it looks something like this. When you look at it as an Excel or a CSV file, it looks something like this. So we are going to read this file into Pandas. Let's see how to do that. So it's very simple. How many lines do you think it's going to be? It's just a single line. pd.readcsv, and then you have to give the path to the file respective to the current location. So currently we are in Pandas. Currently we are in this folder, and what we are trying to do is read something inside data. So that is what the path is going to be: data slash sales information dot csv, and control enter to run the script, and ta-da, we have the data loaded. Next, what we are trying to do is we are trying to push this readed data into a Postgres DB. So I'm going to assign this to a variable, and imagine how hard is it going to be to push into a database. It's very simple. But before doing that, we need a database setup. So I have my Postgres installed here, and this is a Postgres reader called pgadmin. Inside that, I have created a database called Pandas dataset, and inside that there is a couple of tables. So here we are going to create a sales information table, and then we are going to push that data into this. So I need a Postgres URL right now, since we are doing this course pretty fast. I have this Postgres URL. So this URL is nothing but the type of the database and who's the user. What is my password? I know that's a lame password, but it's okay because it's running in my local host. And then Pandas dataset. This Pandas dataset is my database name here. Okay. So that's my Postgres URL. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to df dot to, and there are like hell a lot of functions in the to arena. If you see to clipboard, CSV, and all that, and if you scroll down good enough to SQL. So this is a single function that we need, and we have to say which table it is. So we have to give a table name. This table name is going to be sales information. I'm going to keep it consistent with our file name, and then we have to give a connection URL, which is your Postgres URL, right? Yeah, that's right. So now we have to make sure that it has read it right? Just like how we did read CSV, what we're going to do is df, okay, let's not do that, pd dot read from. So read again has a lot of functions like this. So read SQL table maybe, and then we have to give the table name, and then what are the table name is sales information, and again as a connection URL you have to give your Postgres URL. There we go. So what we did here is read CSV and write the read CSV into an SQL, and then have read the SQL again for you. So this is from SQL df. Wait a minute. Here it says table name, here it says con, here it says name. How do we remember all this? Do you have anything special for that? You don't have to memorize any of this. All you have to do is pd dot, and then you can find, if you press tab, you will find all these things. And I'm going to say, let's say, go to our read CSV method. And then when I say underscore underscore doc, I'll get a beautiful doc. Okay, now it's not beautiful. Let's just do a print. Okay, now it'll be beautiful, I promise. So now you have a beautiful documentation right here. So here you will have file path, separator, so a lot of configurations. Now let's also look at your read SQL tables documentation, right? Every function in Pandas has a neatly written documentation. You can look at that by using doc file, or you can look at Pandas read SQL table, and the page will have a detailed documentation on what are the parameters that you should use. This documentation you should never let go of. You should always keep it on your side because this comes really handy when you're stuck. I hope you have learned a lot. Until next time, keep coding, keep enjoying. Hello all, I am Bhavani Ravi teaching you data analytics using Pandas. In the previous video, we have gone through basic functionalities that you can do with your data frame. In this video, we are going to get a deeper look at our data because when you are using Pandas and when you're doing data analytics, you have to know your data like it's your back of your hand. So here what I have is a very simple 20 row data, and as I said, it's a sales information and it's dynamically generated. It's not any company's data. Okay, so first thing here is notable, like it's a country, and then region wise, salesperson wise, when was the date of sale, date of purchase is as the date of sale, and then total amount that they sold that particular day, and then quantity that they sold. So imagine this is like a salesperson roaming around or calling, cold calling people and selling something things. So things that you would want to do on top of this data would be, getting the person who has performed the most, who has earned the most, the maximum quantity sold, what is the correlation between the date and the amount sold. And there are a huge bunch of opportunities with this data. So in the next upcoming videos, that is exactly what we are going to see. We are going to do sorting, do kinds of pivoting, and this whole course is all about extracting interesting information from the data. Until then, keep learning, keep enjoying. Hello and welcome back to the course on data analytics using Pandas. In the previous video, we have gone through how to read data from different mediums and how to write data into different mediums. In this video, we are going to play around with this data using Pandas. So to start with, we have to understand this data even better. Sometimes when you're doing a machine learning project or just in data analyst, you want to understand, for example, how many rows and how many columns are there in this data. So df.shape is the function that lets you do it. If you see here, there are 6 columns and 20 rows. And there is another function. Sometimes you might have hundreds of rows and thousands of rows. At that point, you can't print out all the data frame, all the rows on the data frame, and it's not important as well. So in that case, what you would do is you have something called as head, and it will by default display the 4 or 5 rows involved. So if you want more than that, you can mention the number and it will give you the first 10 rows. Now let's say you want to look at the last 10 rows, right? You don't necessarily want to look at the first 10, you want to look at the last 10. So tail of 10 will give you the last 10. Again, by default, it will only show you the last 5 rows. Next up, we are going to use this function called as describe to understand our data better. This function gives you an understanding of what the numerical data involved in the data frame, and it gives you count of each column, mean, standard deviation, variance, and all that. We'll get back to this data frame. What we want to do now is, let's say I don't want all this information. I only want to look at country, region, and then total amount. To do that, what I can do is, so first of all, if I just say df of country, I'll get the country alone. If I continue this way and say region, it will give me an error saying, this is an invalid syntax because this is not a key that they are expecting. When you're using multiple keys, what you have to do is you have to make it into a list. So I'm making it into a list, and there we go. So now we have both country and region. So this is just a Python list. What you can do is selected columns, and this is a list, and I can use this list inside my data frame. There we go. It gives you the same result. Now you can go and do total, and there we go. So we can keep on adding all the frames. What happens if you give an empty list? It gives you nothing. So this is how you select the specific columns. Once we have selected this, we can also do head off in here, and we can do tail off because every selection in itself is a data frame. Wait a minute, we have been talking a lot and I didn't tell you what a data frame is. The DF that we have created here, the pandas, all the data is represented in the form of a data frame or a series. So we'll look at series later. For now, if you do type of, it's a pandas data frame structure. So just like Python's integer, float, pandas has data frame and series. Okay. Now we have selected columns. What if I want to select rows? There are two methods to do it. One is def dot ilog. Ilog means index, and I can say 0 to third column. Okay. So it gives me 0 to third columns. Next up, what we would want to do is to filter out certain things. For example, what if I want to filter out, this is my data frame, and what if I want to filter out country only India? Okay, in that case, what we would do is df of country, where country is equal to India. Okay, so now we have entries of only country with India. And now what if I want to look at country only India and then a quantity which are greater than 90? So to do that, and df of quantity greater than 90. This will not work because it's an invalid syntax. So what you should do is you have to inside a bracket and then it will work. Okay, so that's just a syntactic error. So now we have the filtered column. So similarly, you can go ahead and filter this with, you can say region is north. See how simple is that? So pretty much these are the basic operations that you would do with the data frame. In this video, we have gone through the basic operations that you can do with the data frame, looking at the top 5 rows, bottom 5 rows, selecting certain columns, filtering out. And in the next video, we'll dig deeper into the Panda structures. Until then, keep learning, keep enjoying. Hello all, this is Bhavani teaching you data analytics using Pandas. In a previous video, we have looked at how to perform basic operations using Pandas data frames. In this video, we are going to look at how to add a new row or column into the data frame, because it's very common that you always have new set of data coming in. For example, imagine you have 4 more sales and you want to add all those into the data frame. So to do that, first you have to have the new data. I'm going to simulate that by adding a new column. Let's say my new column is, okay, it's a list which contains, so my new column actual name of, so I'm going to simulate this data and my new column is going to be calls made. Okay, number of calls made, and let's say by default it's always 10. Okay, my calls made looks something like this, right? So everybody by default makes 20 calls because there are 20 rows in my data, and this calls made I'm going to add it to my data frame. So let's do that. Df of calls underscore made equal to calls made. Now let's print our data frame and see how it goes. df.head again. There we go. That is as simple as that. Now you can also have something like 10 plus 60 of 60 star 10. So first 10 has made 10 calls and the next 20 has made 60 calls. Now you can add that as well. 20. See, that's got updated. Now adding a column is easier, but row is a bit tricky. Let's say you have a row like this. My new row is pretty much the same, right? So my new row is country, China, and region East. Salesperson is Jim. And let's say I'm adding a new date. I'm going to just copy paste this. And the sale this person has made is 70,000. And then the calls that he made is 40. Okay, this is my new row. If I just do df dot, let's just say, so data frame has a method called append, And df.append of row might be so tempting for you to do, right? But what happens is it just appends it as a column. Things get very messy here, right? So what it did was it added a new column 0 because there are no particular, it converts row into a data frame, and then it adds it as a single column since wherever the data has gone missing, it has filled it with nan. So this is a very bad way to do it. Another way to do it is convert this into a data frame. Okay, so to do that, pd dot data frame of row. Did you see that? So it converts this into a data frame and then does this. So we want to make sure that it is a list of list. So now it gives us the thing in the column. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to convert this into a data frame and then I'm going to append it. Now we'll face a different problem. The problem now is, since there is difference in the column label here and here, this kind of gets messy here. So we also need to create a pandas data frame with specific columns. And that columns, we will get it from df.columns.values. There we go. So now we have the new data in. And now if we append this new df row, I'm going to add this new df row. Sorry. There we go. Finally, it got added in the right order. When a new data comes in, be it row or column, it's pretty easy. When it's a row, change that into a data frame. Make sure that both the data frames have the same column name. You can do that using columns. And then append it. We'll learn a lot more in the upcoming videos. Until then, keep learning, keep enjoying.